To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
First meeting of the year, I have some work to do.
Yes, you do.
The first order of business for 2018 is to elect a board chair to serve for the year. So I will open it up right now and ask for nominations.
I'll nominate Jeff Jelinski.
Are there any other nominations?
I would make a nomination to close the nominations.
So are there any other nominations?
That's
Are there
right.
any other nominations? If hearing none, I will close the nominations and ask for a motion to have Jeff Jelinski serve as 2018 chair.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank
The
you.
second order of business is to ask for nominations for the 2018 vice chair. I'll open nominations for 2018 vice chair.
I'll nominate Randy Wincher.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Calling for a third and final time, are there any other nominations for 2018 vice chair? Hearing none, I will close nominations and ask for a motion to cast unanimous ballot for Randy Winter for 2018 vice chair.
Also move it.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Congratulations,
Thank you,
Mr.
thank
Vice
you.
Chair.
All right, and now I will hand this over to Mr. Jelinski. The order of business.
Thank you, ma'am.
Start over. Or the minutes.
We'll be looking for an approval of the county board minutes, our past county board minutes.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda, Beth?
Mr. Chair, I have no changes this morning.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on the table to approve the agenda. Is there any, whatever? Hearing none.
Discussion.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Mr. Chair, I have an announcement to make.
Please.
Anyway, yesterday, I was a grandfather for the 5th time. My granddaughter was born
Why,
on
congratulations.
New Year's Day at 12:08, 7 pounds, 8 ounces, so.
Congratulations.
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 I thought you had a special glow this morning.
The next item on our agenda is the approval of the annual resolutions and appointments, and our first one is our travel policy. Ms. Gruber?
We're going to do them all together,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, so I'm going to take a minute and go through those, and they
Please.
can have one motion for consideration.
Very good.
This is the business we conduct every year. The first meeting of the year kind of sets the tone for a number of different things that we have going on throughout the year. The first is the elected official and department head travel policy for 2018. Anytime there may be business that requires us to go out of state. Not often does that happen, but sometimes that does. And so this resolution identifies that there are a limited number of reasons that are approved by the board that folks can go outside of the state. If a travel falls within even these parameters, we're talking about it with the board. It's very seldom that you aren't aware of what's going on, that's for sure. And so any type of federal legislative type of travel or meetings in adjacent states. Sometimes there's a conference that's held, like, for example, in Fargo, where it's real close, or anything that's directly related to the business. This resolution covers that. Otherwise, you approve individually any travel outside of state. The second is the attendance for payment for citizens who attend and are appointed to various committees. The most typical we have is the Board of Adjustment and Planning Commission. You're well aware of those. You see those all the time. And then various committees that you all are a part of, either the Extension Committee, Public Health Advisory Committee, the Trails Committee, things of that nature. All of them right now are at $50 for the per diem. On an annual basis, we have to identify our public meeting notice process. And so not only do identify the legal paper, and that bid will be opened shortly, but the publication or the posting of those public meetings. I did identify for all of 2018 that we are in the city, obviously city council chambers of Little Falls instead of the Morrison County Board. But other than that, that's how the process is for identifying our public meetings and how we notify the public and post those. The next is a code of conduct. This is something that kind of began as I don't know, a number of years ago, just an example setting process for the commissioners. You require a high standard. You behave certain ways, and you expect that of employees. I think this is a great resolution that kind of identifies and sets the tone for all of us as an organization on how we conduct ourselves when representing the organization, how we treat each other, how we treat the public, how we conduct business. And so that is set forth for each of you to sign, and then, again, is used as an example for the rest of the organization on how to behave. The next is a citizen committee appointment list. This can change meeting by meeting as things come up, either people leave or new ones come on. We have this up to date as best as we have possible, except the public health, which was just identified and changed a bit on Friday, if you recall. We made a few appointments and haven't gotten those in there yet. But otherwise, we'll present that list as identified and make changes throughout the year as that happens. This next is a list of commissioner appointments for 2018. This is one that I have some yellow. Commissioner Johnson's, after he passed away, we did kind of temporarily readjust or divide those committee appointments. To the best of my knowledge, I reflected that in this email. If there's something that's different in this attachment, if you want to let me know, did it look accurate to you as far as I can tell, or you can tell?
It did to me.
Okay. Again, if things change or if there are things that come up with your schedules, those are things that can be adjusted throughout the year. The next is the annual county board mileage reimbursement. You as commissioners are allowed to be able to have expense reimbursements for business as a county board member. And so this identifies those eligible meetings and not eligible meetings that are somewhat common question items. So that's that resolution and what that means. And then as an annual obligation to or requirement for you as a county board, you need to set the elected officials' salaries. A number of years ago, we went to the pay grade system as every other county employee is compensated. What that system does is really take into those statutory obligations or requirements that you as a county board have when looking at how to set salary. It takes into account reasonable market comparisons that's required in statute to take into account. Tenure is taken into account. They progress through a system similar to every other department head and every other county employee in terms of their pay scale. And those are the annual resolutions for 2018, and I'd ask for consideration of those.
And with that explanation, I would ask for a motion for approval of the annual resolution.
I'll make a
and
motion for more
appointments.
discussion, Mr. Chair.
I'll second it.
Got a motion on the table and a second. Is there any other further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I have a question on committee attendance payment for citizens. Over the past few years, it's kind of getting tougher and tougher to get people to appoint that. And at the AMC here a month ago, and I'm asking other board what they're paying their citizens committee, and most of them are at higher than what we are. And I would just like to bring that out to the board if that's something that we possibly should raise for people that, they're basically volunteering their time and they put in a lot of effort over the months or years, and I just think we should probably take a look at that, maybe.
You tell me. That's something we didn't talk about during budget time, but it's not a substantial cost, I'd imagine. I need to probably be able to get you numbers on what that would look like for somebody who has a lot of committee appointments like Amy and Land Services. It's again, probably not going to be significant enough that she couldn't make that work, but if you want to know exact numbers on what that impact would be, I could bring that to you, but I don't have it today.
I think that would be a great discussion during budget hearings, learning what we've just learned right now. I think it would be a wonderful discussion. I'm certainly not opposing that. I think that it is worth clarification, though, when we're talking about per diems and appointments. We all go to a lot of meetings. The county board does not get a per diem. We just need to make that very clear. This is for citizens that sit on committees, as you explained, Commissioner. But I think that as far as the financial obligation, and it's $50 a meeting today, I think that it's a wonderful discussion for our budget hearings, which, as Ms. Gruber pointed out, we didn't discuss that at all.
And Mr. Chair, we can certainly bring that up in a future planning session, but I could come prepared with those numbers and what that would impact for 2018, because this can be changed at any vote in the future. And so, Commissioner Winter, what were some levels that we could?
Most of them are around the $75.
$75, okay. All right. Well,
And I don't know that I'm opposed to that. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. I'm just suggesting that maybe we need to do that during
And
budget times.
I agree with you, Mr. Chair.
Because, as you said, to get somebody to take the time out, whether it's an hour or whether it's 5 hours out of their time to come to a meeting, you're right, it's getting harder and harder to find people to do that, so.
Mr. Chair, I'm guessing, I have a hunch, while I haven't spoken to every single committee member, that most of them aren't doing this for the money. It certainly isn't something
Exactly.
that pays
Without a
for
doubt.
that in terms of a great wage by any means. But I absolutely will look at that. I'll talk to Amy for sure and the other committees and find out what that would impact, and you guys can make that informed decision maybe at some point in time in the future.
Is there any other further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I have a question on my committees. I'm on Benton County Watershed District, and I have never attended a meeting. I didn't know I was on that one.
Okay.
So I thought Randy was on that one, or were you never on that, Randy?
Again, I attended a couple, but I was never as a,
Okay.
if that answers your question, Commissioner Wilson?
Well, is this something you would rather, should I have you listed, or is this?
No,
I mean,
that's
again,
fine.
you-
I just didn't know that I was on it, so I've never attended a meeting to that,
Well,
but
and I don't know that it's of how some of these I'm not real familiar with how they work. They're brought to me by commissioners, and I don't know for sure. So in the past, this has been something that's been attended, I think, by the representative in your district, or at least the option to attend. I don't know that it's a seat that you have a voting membership on, if it was just an informational thing. So that's a really good question. I'm not certain what the answer is.
would I also be listed here as an alternate for South Country and Mississippi Headwaters?
I'm sorry, what?
Would I still be listed as an alternate here for South Country Health Alliance and Mississippi Headwaters?
Yep, this will serve its purpose in terms of whether you're listed as the main member or an alternate. You're attending, and those are committees that you're
Okay.
listed to and that you
Sounds
can
good. Thank you.
receive expense reimbursements on and such.
Thank you.
And as you know, I mean, we decided not to formally appoint people to those because we had alternates, which that's the very purpose of that, is that you're able to attend those meetings and identified with that organization as being a voting member.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, moving with that point, Deb, do we, again, apparently we had a mix-up, or I did, when I was appointed to the Morrison County Community Correction Board. Do they aware that now I sit on that board, or is that something I have
Are
to
you
reach out?
talking about that, or are you talking about the rural
The
finance?
the
Okay.
rural finance, yeah.
They are aware of that. That's what
Okay.
I had notified them of. That was one of those where we all kind of did some switching, and to get used to those different
Right.
committee members is tough. And so, yes, Carol has you on as a member. Commissioner Wilson sits on that, but only as an ex officio member because of his service on the Community Development Board. And so, yes, well aware of that. That's what we have for the interim anyway, until somebody else maybe would serve more permanently.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I have another discussion item. When we receive our new commissioner, we will go through these again for appointments so that people understand that then we'll change our committees around again at that point in time. Okay.
And once that it's determined what their availability is, the interest is the same as when we have had any of you come onto the board in terms of just see what they have available, I guess, to serve and what their interests are. And that, based upon who has filed, will be next April. There will be a primary in February, so next April will be when that is ultimately determined.
Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
All right, thank you. The next order of business is kind of another annual event. We do need to request bids for legal printing. We have requirements in law that identify numerous things that we have to publish in a legally identified and put forth publication. So we have that available, or the time is now to do that. And so we received one bid from the Morrison County Record, and I'll open that now, but I didn't bring a letter opener, so if you'll bear with me here.
And it's the only one that we received?
It is the only one that we received, and that's not uncommon. So for 2018, the bid that we have is from the Record, and they submit, I'll just read it, how's that? We respectively submit the following bid for publication of your legal items in 2018. It is the same rate quoted all government units within our legal jurisdiction. The maximum legal rate allowed by the state of Minnesota for the Record in 2018 is 30 cents per word or $1.50 per line. Most, if not all, local governments with one legal newspaper are paying the maximum rate allowed by law. We are pleased that we can continue providing a savings from these maximum rates for our local unit of government. The 2018 bid is a line rate of 89 cents per line and a display ad rate of $7.45 per column inch. And we remind you that the Record continues to serve you with over 19,000 independently audited circulation, and it saturates Morrison County and points beyond. And then they talk more about their fabulous service.
Okay.
The rates for 2018, just for your information, were 87 cents per line and $7.30 per column inch. So there was an increase slightly at 2 cents per line and 15 cents per column inch. This is the only response that we had, so my recommendation would be to accept and approve that legal bid printing.
Also move, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion, we have a second?
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
All right. Thank you.
Next item of business. Looks to me like we get to hear from the sheriff.
We do, and I think the sheriff has some guests for us.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Morning, Sheriff.
Morning.
I can see I'm not going to be able to fit in this
Oh,
chair.
shoot. There's one on the other side of Jake that might work better.
Survive some more. A little awkward over here,
All right.
but we'll get it done.
We're going to adapt and overcome.
Yes, it is weird. I'm
So,
sorry.
first of all, Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year.
So early on, I would say probably early November, I was contacted by Neil Hagstrom, who was the adjutant of the Swanville Legion. And he was wondering if our office could utilize an unmanned aerial system, a drone, and that they would be able to fund that project for us if that's something that we could utilize. And it just happened that Deputy Heffron and I were actually discussing this and talked about what a resource it would be here locally, and it just happened to kind of land in our lap. So this whole drone project is being done in memory of Dwayne Johnson, our past commissioner. Before we start, I just want to recognize three personnel in the crowd. We have Bruce Johnson with us from the Swanville VFW. We have Fred Duke with us from the Swanville Legion. And we have Matthew Hagstrom, who's Neil's son, representing the Swanville Lions Club. And what we did was we got 3 checks, one from the Swanville Lions Club, one from the American Legion in Swanville, and one from the Swanville VFW, to total $15,000. I brought Deputy Heffron with because he's the brains behind this whole project when it comes to the drone. He's actually a commercial aircraft pilot, and he's going to discuss different options that this drone can be utilized for, and kind of some of the things that it'll do. And I guess I'll kind of turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me, and Happy New Year. We can go to the next slide. So again, these are the 4 topics I'm going to cover, just kind of an introduction, some of the missions that we're looking at possibly utilizing it for, some of the equipment, and then how we can apply this in a legal standpoint. So my qualifications are, again, I'm a commercial pilot. I've been here with the Sheriff's Office about 11 years. My first love was always aviation, but there were no aviation jobs when I was in college, and so I ended up doing law enforcement and loving that as well. I also fly drones commercially, so I have some experience in that aspect. I've been looking for years, personally, just on the side, looking for grants and the option to get some kind of a drone for the sheriff's office, and so I was really excited about this opportunity. He talked a little bit about Neil Hagstrom and where we got the funding from, so you can go ahead. So some of the missions, I understand part of the screen's cut off, but you can see most of it. Our primary mission for this would be search and rescue. Basically, if you have the right equipment, you can find somebody very quickly from the air. Right now, if we call for a helicopter to look for, say, a missing child or somebody wandering, we might wait upwards of 2 hours, and depending on weather, we may not get a helicopter at all. And then the cost of a helicopter flight, they run in the hundreds to thousands an hour. But some of the examples might be a missing child, a missing hunter, somebody that fell through the ice. A couple weeks ago, we had someone call 911 and say they fell through the ice. They ended up being in Todd County, but they didn't know what lake they were on or what part of the lake they were on. So being able to scan and look for them, when the clock is ticking is very important. During the summer, you might have a missing boat or somebody fell overboard, can't find them. That'd be a quick way to scan a lake. Vehicle crashes, a lot of people don't understand that we sometimes are looking for missing people on a vehicle crash. Either they are injured and they wandered off in the woods because they weren't self-aware, or they got ejected. And sometimes people get ejected hundreds of yards from a crash scene, and if it's a wooded or a swampy area, it's very difficult to find somebody walking through that. I don't know if everyone's familiar with Project Lifesaver in our county, but people that tend to wander that either are autistic or have dementia or Alzheimer's, we can put a wristband on them, and it has a little radio transmitter, and that's a handheld unit that we're trained to use as the sheriff's office, and that can be integrated into the drone as well, and the drone can actually go out and find those missing people and find that radio beacon. One example of what and we'll talk about the equipment, but what the infrared FLIR can do. A few years ago, we got our first squad-mounted FLIR. It's mounted on the top of our spotlight, and it can sense heat, and it doesn't use the visible light range. And there was a juvenile drinking party we were at, and one of the juveniles had ran from the scene out into the field, and we didn't know how many kids were there or who was there. And we were done processing the scene. We couldn't find anybody else. And we were leaving, and Joel Gross, who's now the patrol sergeant, had the FLIR, and he scanned a field and saw something warm out in the field. And we went out there, and I found a young juvenile female passed out in the snow, with no shoes, wearing a tank top and jeans. And so that was an example of, I believe that life was saved, and was treated for hypothermia and left. So that's an example of what a FLIR can do. Now, taking that FLIR off the squad and moving into the air really brings up its capabilities. Another example of the missions would be fire support. If we have a lot of grass fires in our county, there's a lot of swampy areas, especially out east. Getting a quick size up of a grass fire could be useful. The FLIR can also see through smoke, so if you needed to see into a top upper window to see if anyone's in it, you could launch that and go around the house quick and see if there's anyone in an upstairs room. It can also see hot spots, so we may not be able to see smoke or something, but if the roof is warm or something, it'll be able to tell you that and be able to see it with the FLIR, so you could tell if there's an issue inside the house yet. Other possible missions that we could use it for, if we had a large crime scene, we could search that and take photos and document that crime scene. Sometimes if we have a very serious crash where there's serious injuries or fatalities, we ask for a helicopter to come and take a photo for the State Patrol recon guys so they can do a crime or a crash scene map. That's something that the drone could also do very quickly and cheaply. If we have some kind of a disaster, we had a tornado come through Camp Ripley, if we needed to assess that for some reason or look for additional damages or look for any possible victims, structures we didn't know about, that'd be a quick way to assess that. If we have somebody that's extremely dangerous, a fleeing felon that ran from us, that's one example of, we could, search a cornfield for somebody that's armed and dangerous. We could also provide SWAT team support. If the SWAT team's going out and doing something, we could take either photos ahead of time of the area so they know how to make their approach and do their thing, or we could actually provide live video of the operation if necessary. So some of the equipment that I was looking at, I got some quotes to fit within that $15,000 budget. So one of the equipment that I would like to purchase would be a DJI Inspire 1. A lot of different law enforcement or public safety agencies use it. And the main reason for that is it's fully integrated with the FLIR camera, and that's the Zenmus XT is the one that makes the FLIR camera. The greatest expense of this is the FLIR camera itself. It's $8,500 for that camera out of that $15,000. The Inspire 1 itself is only around $2,000, and we would actually purchase 2 of those and be able to fit within this budget. One is kind of a backup or a training one in case the first one needs to be sent in for service or get fixed. And the camera can be mounted on either and quickly move from one to the other. So between the 2 drones and then the FLIR camera, they'd also be equipped with a spotlight system. Most drones don't really have a light or anything on them except just position lights to show you where it's at. But this would actually have a spotlight on it. It would also have a payload drop system, and that's one of the things that excites me about using the drone is that we'd actually have the capability, if someone fell through the ice, to bring a life jacket out to them or bring a rope out to them and drop it to them quickly. With this purchase, in the quote I got, I could also get a DJI Spark, which is pictured on the bottom right, and that would be kind of for training purposes, to train new guys on how to use the drones, and it can also be flown indoors. It has shields on the propellers so that if you bump into a wall or something, it's not going to hit the ground. So if we ever needed to make entry into an upper window or go inside of a residence for some reason, we could do that with the smaller camera. And the FLIR doesn't go on that or anything, it just has one small live camera. There's the spotlight system. It's those 2 cubes on either side of the camera in the middle, and that's the Lume Cube spotlight system. Here's an example of the FLIR camera and what we'd see. Again, this provides live video back to us as it's flying, so we can actually see everything live. And if we needed to record it or take photos, we can do that. Here's an example of black and white, what it would look like at night, seeing in the dark. You can see the person in all 3 of those photos as it comes closer. Skip past that and that. We had some videos, but they aren't working in here. So the application of it, basically, there's a lot of regulations out there with the FAA and a lot of changing regulations as far as when and how to use drones, and that's just for the civilian side. For law enforcement, it's a lot more strict, and we would have to comply with all the federal, state, and local laws regarding those. Governments basically fall under an extra, we can't just survey things. If you're a fire department and you own a drone, technically you could go out and do surveillance or look around. We can't look at an individual residence for surveillance without a search warrant, for instance, being law enforcement. So we'd have to have a search warrant. We'd have to have all of our reasons and probable cause to do that. The only reason you can go beyond that and do something without a search warrant is for search and rescue and to save a life. If you have any questions on that, I can answer those as well. But basically, there has to be a policy, there has to be a training plan submitted to the FAA and a certificate of waiver obtained. And then every flight that we fly, whether it's training or real, is logged. And it's actually logged automatically by the drone, but also then labeled by who flew it and whatever. So it's a very transparent project. Does anybody have any questions on the equipment, what it can do, capabilities as far as range or anything? I can answer those as well.
Gentlemen, discussion.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions, if I may. First of all, I want to thank the donations from the Lions, VFW, and the Eagles Club. It's very appreciative to the police department and the sheriff's department. So again, thank you on Dwayne's behalf. Question I have, maintenance on these, training, there's going to be a cost, I'm assuming, on those. And with you, with your commercial license, I'm assuming you can probably do it, but would you be the only one that's able to control the drone? And if not, would we have to train somebody, and there's a cost? And again, the camera, I'm sure it's got motors on it or some darn thing, is there going to be a maintenance cost on that too?
There'd be a warranty on the equipment itself. Ongoing, there probably would be some costs down the road, but it'd be very minimal. The parts for the drones are actually very cheap, and most of the maintenance can be done by myself. I've completely stripped them down and rebuilt them just from scratch, and there's really it's not as difficult as you think or as expensive as you would think. The drone itself it's $2,000, but the camera on the drone on that is probably half that cost, and we're not even using those cameras to start out. I'm using the FLIR camera. As far as the training, I can do all of the training in-house and generally on duty with my partners when I work with them, so there wouldn't be any additional cost there. I would like to go personally to maybe one training that would fit within our training budget to refresh on the new laws, like a one-day course on that as far as the new FAA laws with law enforcement. There's some specific courses on that. But other than that, I'm a flight instructor as well, so I can sign off new guys on this equipment in-house without any additional cost.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Jake, I have just a quick question or two, and Commissioner Winter probably touched on it already, because cost was one of my questions. I'll look at the sheriff and I'll say, Sheriff, in your training budget, do you foresee any kind of an issue with this project being incorporated into your budget for 2018?
So, Commissioner, Mr. Chair, just to answer your question, I'd say no, just because of the in-house experience that we currently have with Deputy Heffron. Now, if he wasn't an instructor, we'd be talking about extra costs, but everything we do will fit into our line item.
I would like to bring Commissioner Lemire in a little involvement in my next piece. A number of years ago, as I think you both might remember, the ethanol plant had an explosion. And I happen to know for a fact that the State Patrol helicopter did come because the fire department wanted to find out what was in the silo or whatever the deal was. That's fire related. That's nothing to do with me. But I'm very well aware of that. And it probably did take 2 or 3 or maybe 4 hours before that helicopter got here. And they got here as soon as they could. If in fact something like that happened today, again, it would take a matter of, as soon as we get the deputy, Jake, yourself, on scene to do that, and it would be just up and we would know at that time.
It's 2 to 3 minute boot up time generally for the drone, and if we're on a scene where we need to leave it up, there's spare batteries that charge off the car. So even if it was up, they run for about 30 minutes is what you have for flight time, and you can land, and it's about a 2 to 3 minute swap out for batteries, and it's back in the air.
So then I would once
You can
again
almost fly continuously with the battery change.
ask Commissioner Lemire, in the fire end of it, would you see a use for something like this?
I would say particularly in the wildland fire.
Okay.
That's where it would be the most useful. A lot of times it's in a swamp and you don't know what's on the other side of the swamp, if it's got a good break or not. I think that would be awesome to give us an aerial view of what's going on up there.
And then I would just like to add one more thing, if I could, for just 1 second. I would like to thank the 3 of you for being here today, and I would like to believe that Dwayne is up above us just smiling like crazy. Go ahead, if you have a
I
question.
have a correction. It's not the Eagles, it's the American Legion.
Legion.
Okay.
Legion.
Thank you.
And really, truly, thank you guys very much for this. It's
thank you.
It's a
Thank
big
you.
honor as far as I'm concerned. And
The only thing I want to add, Mr. Chair, is that, basically this would serve the entire Morrison County, and we talked about how Swanville crosses lines into Todd County as well, so obviously if they had a need, we'd be assisting their county as well, too.
thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add, Jake, thank you. I know that you put in extra time. I know that your expertise is making this happen too. So kudos to you, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Work you've done in bringing your expertise to the benefit of all of Morrison County. That's nice. Thank you very much.
So just to clarify, it's the Swanville Lions, Swanville VF, and the Legion out of Uppsala. Swanville. Everything is Swanville. Okay, thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
And then the only thing I have to add, Mr. Chair, is we actually have the checks, so if it's okay, we're going to do a photo of the three of these gentlemen presenting the check, or one of them, or whomever, but they all can be in the photo with the commissioners. We think that'd be best, and that's the way
very
Dwayne would
neat.
probably want it, so.
And first, though, if you wouldn't mind formally accepting that donation so we can move forward with that process of accepting it and then finding equipment that needs to be.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to accept the $15,000 donation for the drone. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
And-
my suggestion for a photo would be maybe to stand in front there where everybody is, and we'll try that out.
Okay. Beth?
Maybe just kind of in the over there. I might be double up a little bit because I'm going to need you to kind
Who wants to present?
kind of maybe the less shorter height. We can stand right there.
Jake?
No, I don't know for sure what works best. You guys can make sure you're seen. Well, I don't know about the board. You guys aren't going to be seen back there. Sean's kind of a big man. Well, he's a tall man.
If we do this, we're never going to get along.
Randy's head
Okay, well, you know, that's fantastic. Oh, right there.
Does Randy's head between those two?
Yeah.
Is that good? Or
See a big guy in front of me here. Randy, just to that way, there you go.
You don't move when he's done. Okay, ready? We're gonna take more. One more for good measure. All right, cool.
And everybody's smiling. Good job, Jake.
You know why I brought in with Tom?
You needed that, yeah.
You always have a fire on it.
Always a spare Excuse me, okay?
I had some questions on these things right here. I suppose I'm too late now.
And I believe our next order of business is going to be county board warrants.
Yep.
Good morning, Deb.
Morning. Mr. Chair, I believe all we have is the warrants for your approval.
We'd like to look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve all the bills and warrants.
Second. Further discussion? Hearing none, is it the roll call vote? Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
Commissioner Winter.
Aye.
And myself, aye. That motion passes.
Perfect.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Deb. Thank you. And Ms. Gruber, it looks to me like you're on the administrator's
Yes.
report.
Mr. Chair, I have a few items, one of them being a closed session. And so my suggestion, if you're okay with it, would be to go through I have one resolution, and then we'll do the committee appointments and the schedules and go through that. And then I'll present another resolution to consider for a closed session before we adjourn the meeting.
That would be good.
All right. The one action item that I have prior to that is that we're coming up on an election year for the row offices. And part of statute requires that you set a minimum salary amount. This is a part of statute that's a little antiquated, maybe like some of the statutes can get. So based upon this, the legal references or the statute references, which I shared with you, the attached resolution identifies that we recognize that it's an upcoming year and that you're setting a minimum salary. And I know you're going to look at me and say, why the heck is it $7,000? That seems ridiculous and it's awful low. The reason that comes from the attorney statute, actually, that they identify a minimum amount with certain population levels. Obviously, people would be paid more than that. I know a common question, and maybe you won't have it, but one that might be asked is, why don't we set what that salary is so people know what they would be making if they would be elected? And my recommendation is we don't want to do that because we don't know who's going to be elected. And part of what we do is consider their qualifications that they bring to the table when we set a salary. We look at their experience, what they bring as far as knowledge base that's relative to the position, what they bring as far as history within a similar type position. All of that comes into play. And so my suggestion is not to limit you in terms of what it is that you would maybe define as a salary. So this is historically what we've done as an organization, just set that base amount based on statute that we have to follow the attorney statute and set it for all of them at that minimum $7,000 and wait to see what happens come election time.
I'll make a motion to approve.
There's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? I'll have a little discussion. I think it's a little bit crazy, to be honest with you, that we're making a motion to bring anybody on board and we're going to pay them $7,000, because that's never going to happen.
And that's not what we're doing. Like I said, it's a minimum based upon, we have to set
And I know,
something.
I know.
Or they would be paid where they're at currently. You can't
Yeah.
reduce that, and I don't think that's a
I
recommendation.
get that.
Oh, okay.
But it's just kind of like, what, 7,000?
Some-
And I understand. I
Some
get it.
statutes are kind of
I get it.
goofy in
Out
that
there.
regard.
They're out there. Okay. Hearing no further discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Thank you very much. And then,
Then
looks
we'll
to
do
me,
schedules, if you wouldn't mind.
schedules. And I'm not going to go first today, Commissioner Wilson. And we would like these throughout for the entire month. I
Entire
think,
month,
right?
yes, through the 28th.
Through the 28th of January.
Okay, on January 5th, we got Teeswax at 8:30. That's at the landfill. On the 9th, I've got planning session. The 10th, I've got the health board up in Staples with the Tri-County. It's MTWCHB board. On the 16th, planning session, community development. On the 18th, I've got airport commission at noon. The 19th, Council of Aging. The 22nd, RDFA at 4 o'clock. Randy, that's that one that you would be on too.
Which one is that again, please?
RDFA at 4 o'clock
Give me the date
on the
again.
22nd.
Oh, 22nd.
And then we have Planning Commission.
Yep.
The 23rd, we have a board meeting. 25th, I have Region 5.
So we have a planning commission? Can I go back? We have a planning commission on what day?
Well, I've got down here the 22nd.
22nd, 7.
Those could be canceled if they don't have anything, but
Planning
Planning
commission.
Commission.
Planning Commission.
Okay.
how far do you want me to go?
28th.
28th.
Okay, that's it for me.
Okay. Commissioner Lemire.
Yellow ribbon on the 8th, 5:30 at Evan Fever. The 11th, I got a Chamber of Commerce at 11 o'clock. The 25th, I got a TCC at 5 o'clock. The 30th, oh, that's it.
Commissioner Wincher.
Okay, they're hit most of them, but again, on the, we're good that week.
Yeah.
On the 10th, there's a department head meeting at 8:30.
Mr. Chair, I don't know that I told you folks, but we'll be having those in the historic courthouse. In the,
Old courthouse on second floor.
yes, correct.
On the 16th, I'll have a Great River Regional Library meeting at 5 PM in St. Cloud. On the 22nd, we have an extension meeting. Now, I don't know if we're going to be moving them out of the old court or
I
the
had been
courthouse.
told, I don't know if this is legit yet, that was maybe going to be in public health, but I don't know that.
That could very well be. I guess I'm not certain where they scheduled those
I don't know, they
changes.
haven't let us know
So, but
yet.
anyway, we have one at 5:30, Jeff and I do, on the 22nd. I'll have a, soil and water at 9 o'clock on the 25th, and that takes me through. Everything else is covered.
And for myself, starting on the 4th, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I've got a legislative conference call dealing with armor. On the 9th, at noon, there's a Toward Zero Death meeting, and that's in the Public Health Conference Room. On the 11th, at 7 PM, there's a Trails meeting at the Fort. On the 12th, at 10 o'clock in the morning, there's an Armor RAC meeting in Douglas County in Alexandria. On the 17th, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I've got a phone conference call dealing with the public safety conference, or public safety conference that's upcoming. 5 o'clock, that same day, there's a Hands of Hope meeting, and that's held at the Pine Country Bank here in Little Falls. On the 18th, I've got an Armor Owners and Operators meeting in Douglas County at 10 o'clock in the morning. That same day, at 7:30 in the evening, there's a Egg Society meeting at the Legion in Little Falls. And on the 22nd at 9 o'clock in the morning, there's an Armor Regional Leadership, I think that's a quarterly meeting. That's at the MnDOT facility in St. Cloud. On the 26th at 10 o'clock in the morning, there's an EMS Joint Powers Board meeting, and that's at the Service Center in White Park. And that takes us through the 28th, I believe. And I'm done.
Mr. Chair, I also have a Mississippi Headwaters on the 19th. I seen it wasn't on there. I looked back, it's the third Friday, so.
And that should take care of our schedules.
Mr. Chair, then I have the closed resolution. I do have a different copy than the one that was in the board packet. I neglected to put the detail in that I needed, and so I'm passing out a new one for consideration. This isn't a new issue. This is the same Camperplea issue that we have with the solid waste ordinance. And so I did reference that specifically in the resolution, and it's identified properly here. So that's the one I need for consideration, please.
Do we need to read this, or do we just need to have a motion?
I
Just
don't,
a motion is
just a
fine?
motion is fine, accepting this resolution.
And that's what I would look for, is a motion.
I'll make a motion that we have the closed session.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? That motion passes. We are now in a closed session,
All right, and if we could just kind of take a break here and
And the
get
time is
organized for that.
9:49.
and the time is 9:48.